I told you guys that I was going to do a preview for the U.S. men's national team's November window, and here we are. And look, I fully realize that it's Friday afternoon and that the first game is tomorrow, and then I really waited until the final hour to do this. But as they say, better late than never. And look, I'm not the primary U.S. men's national team channel on YouTube. You guys know who those guys are. They're going to cover the roster more in depth. They're tracking how every single player does every weekend. I'm kind of like the doctor that you go to for the second opinion, right? If you have an ACL injury and you go to the doctor and you don't like what they say, you come to DeadBall TV for the U.S. men's national team stuff, okay? That's kind of what I offer here. Except in like the medical terms, I guess I'm the doctor that typically tells you the worst news, right? Like the first doctor is what's going to tell you, hey man, you might not even need surgery. You should be back up and running and lifting at the gym within a couple weeks. Then you come see me and I'm like, every piece of cartilage is torn. The ligaments are finished. We might have to amputate the leg. That's kind of my role inside the U.S. men's national team community. So I just try to give you guys my honest opinion. That's really what I try to do in these videos. I do want to also announce that we will be live on the channel for Paraguay U.S. men's national team tomorrow as Saturday. Should be a really, really good game. So for my U.S. fans, you are getting the preview video late, but you're still getting it. And you are getting a live stream. And you are getting the November window recap, just like I always give y'all the window recap video. So you're getting 3 videos minimum, plus plenty of other ongoing content covering the U.S. men's national team and CONCACAF. So I hope you guys hit subscribe so you don't miss that. Let's pull up the squad. I'm going to do squad reaction, then previews for the matches and my scores. I have it on screen now. I could go through this one by one, but that might take a little while. So instead, I'm just going to do some pros and cons. How about that? Biggest pro down below in the comments. Let me know what you guys are thinking. For me, my number one is the Mönchengladbach boys back in the squad. Gio Reyna and Joe Scally. Given how the rest of the roster is composed, I actually think Gio Reyna's inclusion is much more important this time around, because if you look at the rest of the midfield, if you look at the forwards, there's not a lot of creativity here, and I will talk about that a little bit more later. So I think it's going to be important that Gio Reyna not only plays, but plays well if the U.S. men's national team is trying to win these games and score goals. And you typically have to score goals to win games in football. That's usually how it works. And Joe Scally, I feel like if he missed this camp, then he was done for the World Cup. So I think this is big for him. Another big pro has to be that Serginho Dest is back, fan favorite of the U.S. men's national team. And I like to see that John Tolkin is back in here as well. I think he's actually a pretty serviceable player, not necessarily a game changer, but a good player. And I think if we're going to be doing this experimenting that Pochettino keeps harping on, then John Tolkin absolutely needs to be included in the squad. So I hope he gets some minutes this window as well. And lastly, I think at the striker position, you got 1, 2, and 3 in the depth chart all here at the same time. I don't really care what your personal depth chart is, but I think we can all agree this is the top 3 options at the 9 position for the U.S. men's national team. Except for the one guy watching this video that still thinks Josh Sargent should be the starting 9. And I know there's one guy watching right now, and he'll tell me that I don't know ball and I don't know how to read the game and whatever, some other terrible excuse. I don't like redheads, which I don't, Connor included. But it is what it is. We can't save these people. Not everyone can be saved, ladies and gentlemen. The cons for this call-up, I would say number 1, obviously the injuries, headlined by none other than Christian Pulisic, which that's always a huge loss for the U.S. men's national team. There's no other way around it. No Chris Richards as well, also hurt. No Jedi Robinson, also hurt. No Weston McKennie or Johnny Cardoso. These aren't necessarily injuries. Well, not in the case of McKennie, just Spalletti has joined Juventus, and I guess Pochettino wants him to be able to prove himself, even though he's gotten a pretty decent stretch of game time anyway, so I feel like the proving was already done. This is why sometimes Pochettino says something, and I'm like, man, your explanation doesn't make any sense. There's not that many camps left before the World Cup. Weston McKennie is starting in the Champions League for his new manager already. Do you really think being released on international duty is going to damage his standing inside the Juventus midfield depth chart? Do you really feel like that's happened? Because I feel like that's a illogical conclusion to come to. I'm not saying it's impossible. Nothing's impossible. But is this really what the fear should be? Should you really not be calling up clearly one of the top midfielders in the pool because maybe the new coach, who's already publicly backed Weston, might have a nightmare that Weston slept with his wife or something and drop him from the team. I just feel like, again, the reasoning here is really bad. But anyways, he's not here. No Johnny Cardoso. He is coming back from an injury. Johnny's an interesting player. I'm an Atleti fan. I thought he was very average in the few games that he played with Atletico Madrid. We just haven't seen enough yet. I'm not trying to crucify the guy. I need more of a sample size. I guess it makes sense to not rush him back from an injury and potentially he aggravates something in this camp and then misses even more time with Atleti, where I don't think he breaks into the midfield right now. That one makes more sense, but you also start wondering, does Johnny Cardoso make the final plane to the World Cup? Because the U.S. appearances we've seen have been diabolical, and he needs more opportunities to prove himself, especially under Pochettino. Tyler Adams did have to withdraw as well. I know he's on here, and I think he's absolutely cooking this season, but he's not going to be on the pitch. I believe it was an injury that he picked up as well. And no Yunus Musa, which I'm not trying to be an asshole, but is that actually a con? Is that actually a negative? I don't know, because I don't think Yunus Musa is very good. I guess if you say that he brings work rate and physicality, sure. Sounds like you're describing Patrick Adjemong, though. So, yeah, I don't really think it's a negative. I don't. I've said my piece on Yunus Musa. I'm not trying to be a bully. I just don't think he's a very good footballer. For a roster grade here, given context, given who could have been called up and wasn't, I would say this is like, what, a 6.5? 6.5? I could go anywhere between a 6 to a 7. I think that's okay. You got to subtract a point for Weston, at least 1 point, but I think you got to add one back for Gio Reyna, so maybe those cancel each other out. We're looking at a 6.5 here. So the game previews here next up. I think there's a couple talking points for the United States. Number one, I think it's going to be very difficult to keep a clean sheet in this window with no Chris Richards and no Tyler Adams. You're talking about the two most talented individual defenders against World Cup qualifying South American teams. I think if this were matches against weaker sides, maybe if it was a Venezuela and, I don't know, Dominican Republic or something, then this isn't a concern. But I think it is a concern, namely in the Paraguay game. I think Uruguay, I'm not sure how exciting that's going to be. They're really struggling to score goals at this point. But you know what could probably help Uruguay get going? Playing a United States that doesn't have their best center back. Playing a United States that doesn't have their best CDM, the best CDM in the region. These are things that could open the opportunity for Uruguay and Paraguay to capitalize on. I also kind of have to question where the goals come from during this window. So I have concerns about clean sheets. Not that I think the United States is going to get ran over. I don't think that would happen. I think that would be embarrassing. If one of these games ends with 4 goals conceded like Switzerland, embarrassing. Beyond embarrassing. And I'm not forecasting that's what's going to happen. But I have concerns about clean sheets. So I think the United States needs to score like 2 goals in every game to win. I do think that they will concede in both games. And then I'm looking at where did the goals come from? Well, we know who's going to score the goals because all the strikers are here. Haji Wright, great goal-scoring record with the United States. Balogun, great goal-scoring record with the United States. Ricardo Pepi, great goal-scoring record with the United States. The guys to finish the chances are there, but who is going to create them? That's why I think Gio Reyna has to get an opportunity because he's going to be the guy in the midfield. Otherwise, we're looking at Sebastian Berhalter to do it. Otherwise, we're looking at Tanner Testament to do it. And they might be able to create 1 or 2 a game combined. Is that going to be enough? What's more likely to happen is that if it's not Gio, it's going to be Max Arston and Serginho Dest. And if you start Max Arston and Serginho Dest at the same time, you are basically asking to get countered with Tim Ream in the back next to Miles Robinson. You're going to struggle to keep a clean sheet in that scenario, is what I'm saying. And the last thing here is I'm a very firm believer of no Pulisic, no party for the U.S. men's national team. Like, that is my mantra, basically. If you look at any meaningful game without Christian Pulisic, the probability of the United States having lost that game is like 70% or more. It's very difficult for the U.S. to beat anyone of note. Again, I'm sure they can beat Nicaragua and stuff without Pulisic, but teams of note, of which Paraguay and Uruguay qualify, without their star man. He is that important for the U.S. men's national team. We are seeing minor steps forward under Pochettino, and there are several U.S. players who are in great form right now. Show us what you can do. We'll talk about Paraguay first because that's the first game, and they have their entire squad here. I would argue there's not a single meaningful omission from the team. This is Paraguay 9.5 out of 10 strength level. And defensively, this is a very solid team that I think had an uncharacteristically poor defensive showing when they went to Asia in the October window. They tied Japan 2-2 and lost to South Korea 2-0. So that's 2 goals conceded a game. That's not really what they're used to. You either have to say that was a fluke and they're going to bounce back here and they're going to really lock it down, or we're going to see a repeat of the last time these guys had to come to the United States, which was the Copa America, when they were the most embarrassing iteration of Paraguay that's ever existed. I'm a believer in Alfaro, but I do also believe that Paraguay away from home is significantly weaker than what they are in Asuncion. They have Julio Enciso back in the team. I'm not going to say that he's necessarily their Christian Pulisic, but I mean, he's kind of getting there. I think we have the potential to say that about Enciso in a couple years. Diego Gomez is in the team. Ramon Sosa, Miguel Almiron, Sanabria is in the team. Everybody is here. I think that Paraguay have the firepower to get at least 1 goal, maybe 2. And I think they have the back line to keep it to 1 goal or less conceded. For that reason, I think it's either going to be a Paraguay 2-1. Maybe the United States pulls a 1-1 draw here. Uruguay game next up. This is a rematch of the 1-0 loss in the group stage at the last Copa America. For the Uruguayan squad, the biggest omissions, no doubt, are Fede Valverde and Darwin Nunez. For me, Fede is the bigger omission because Darwin hasn't really scored for Uruguay since the Copa America. Now, I'm not saying that Now, that being said, this would have been a great opportunity for him to get back on track. There's nothing like a couple CONCACAF opponents to potentially get your swag back, to do a little Russell Westbrook stat padding. And he's going to miss that. I think if the United States concedes more than 2 goals here, that's unacceptable and embarrassing is how I would classify that, because this Uruguay team is not who they were 18 months ago going into the Copa America. And the United States was able to fight that Uruguay team to a near standstill and narrowly lose. And I think they should be expecting the same. Now, a win against either side would be huge. And I keep thinking about this. Like, who's the team that the States would more likely beat? Paraguay or Uruguay? And it's very difficult to say because these are friendlies and there will be rotation. But you can argue it's Uruguay in the second game. You could argue that if Uruguay beats Mexico 3-0 or something like that, that they're going to experiment a little bit, and the USA might be able to sneak something. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think anybody would be pleased with 1 win, 1 loss in this window. I think that type of performance would add to a respectable record against CONMEBOL recently for the United States. Certainly a better record than what Mexico's had lately. And that is the video, guys. You let me know what you think down below in the comments. Again, I'll be live for the Paraguay game tomorrow night. Me and Connor will be together for that stream. Should be a great time. If you guys don't want to miss that and other U.S. men's national team content here on the channel, make sure you are subscribed. Smash the like button if you enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.